Yo, hello, welcome. My name is Carl McKenna. I'm presenting to you on behalf of Vitruvian Health the 20 tips to accelerate body recomposition. So what is body recomposition? Well, we actually don't tell you about that in this presentation. How ironic, but we are going to explain it to you now. So body recomposition is where you have muscle mass and fat mass. So if we were to get, say, a 100 kilo body, and with that 100 kilo body, we wanted to put on 10 kilos of muscle, but we wanted to stay at 100 kilos. So the art of recomp is how can we stay at that same weight and build muscle and just drop fat. So if in, say, 12 weeks time, we put on that 10 kilos of muscle and we still weighed 100 kilos, we've recompositioned this body. And that is what we're going to be really looking at. How can we, so it's not about building slabs of muscle or stripping lots of fat. It's about applying daily routines or habits that you can do every day or create awareness of these things or strategies you can implement to have a positive effect on body recomposition. So that should be improving energy, cognitive function, muscle mass. And the funny thing about building muscle mass is if you can build muscle, that there's a whole lot of functions that are actually working, because one of the hardest things to do is actually build muscle. Now with that, to build more muscle requires more energy. And then with that extra energy, if you don't really change your caloric intake or your routine too much, then what happens is your body will actually burn a little more energy, and that energy comes from fat. So that's where that art of body recomposition occurs from. Now, if you're personally listening to this and you go, oh, I don't really want body recomp, I just want to strip lots of fat, or I just want to build lots of muscle, then probably the news for you is that we're going to split this up into two segments. So the first 10 tips is going to be about fat loss, and the second is going to be about muscle hypertrophy. So if you want one or the other, then just pay attention to that part and then switch off for the other half. But hopefully you can get a little bit out of everything. And a real good strategy to apply from today is just implement one of these things. And if you notice personally yourself after 7 days, you're like, I don't think I've noticed any difference. Like, you can message me, go on our website and reach out to me personally and just say, hey Carl, didn't notice the difference, or add another one the next week or the next day. So with that being said, got to do my due diligence and disclaimer, all information from Vitruvian Health in regards to training, nutrition, and therapy is for educational purposes only. It is not meant to diagnose or treat any health conditions and is not a replacement for treatment by a healthcare provider. If you have any concerns, please consult your local GP. With that said, now we can get into the polywaffle, the banter, the chats, questions with myself, as I explained, Carl McKenna, and Vitruvian Health. And this is kind of these strategies for our top 20 tips for body recomposition. So to give a bit of a spiel, we had Tats, myself, Constance, Eddie, and Jordan when building out this presentation, and kind of all had our own successes, which, I educated these guys, but they all took their own personal approach to it. So powerlifting, body recomp, bikini competitors, muscle hypertrophy, fat loss. So a lot of these things have been applied by 4 different people and have led to 4 different outcomes through their own personal experiences, which is pretty cool to have. So a bit about me is I used to be the skinny kid, never really used to be very muscular. And one day my partner pretty much called me a skinny lesbian. I got really offended. And I was like, no, I'm a man. She's like, yeah, well, you look like a 12-year-old boy. I'm like, okay, that's not cool. So then I started and took to the gym. And after about 5-6 years of applying these little tips and tricks, I've now started to build some physique. So here you can see a little bit of a bicep. Still needs work, but it is what it is. So a whole bunch of information more about who I am and what I do. But fundamentally, the role I play in Vitruvian Health is to upskill and educate the trainers to be world-class, to provide a pretty much seamless experience that's super simple, super easy. And that's by implementing one thing at a time and not overcomplicating it. With what we do, we focus on consistency, mindset, lifestyle, training, and nutrition. And we work with people on probably what that priority is. And as I said, with the things to note is precisely this. Precisely define your training goal and therefore training and nutrition modalities. So this means that if your goal was to strip fat, you're probably going to be working more towards nutrition. If your goal is to build muscle, you're probably going to be focusing more on training. There's no need to overload yourself, overcomplicate things. And I feel like a lot of information in the day-to-day, a lot of people are overcomplicated. There's 100 ways to skin a cat is a phrase. Don't know why anyone would test those 100 reasons, but there's 100 ways to do things. And as such, I believe that you should prioritize the one that works best for you. And you might be shortly find out that it doesn't work for you, but you think it will. You got to trial it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, but at least you'll know where it is. So you want to clearly define what the goal is. So asking yourself today, or you can write on a piece of paper what it is you want to look for. So if you want to improve structural balance, so improve posture, cognition, then you're starting at the base. If you want to work on correctives and remedials that supports your posture, then you're working up the chain. If you're working on lifestyle and nutrition foundations, I spelled that, whoops, compound movements or muscle growth, fat loss, there's a bit of a hierarchy to start with. So if your goal is to build muscle, then you want to be confident that you can lift your own body weight with deadlifts, bench, squat, pull-ups, overhead press, before really prioritizing more of a focus on this, because it means that the body is just not strong enough to handle those stresses. So if you were to think about it on a ladder, or like think of this pyramid. If your base is only half of it, the peak of the pyramid only goes halfway up. The bigger your base, the greater the peak. And this is why we always start with structural balance first, then we implement correctives, things that have a level of progression with strength. So you should be able to see each week getting stronger improvements in reps. Then working on lifestyle and nutrition foundations. Then implementing big compound movements, so starting to get more complicated. Then muscle growth and fat loss does tend to become a lot easier. So when you see muscle growth, when you've got the fundamentals, structural balance achieved, you can lift your body weight with large compound movements. Then when it comes to muscle growth, after about 6 to 8 weeks time, you should be seeing a natural progression of weight gain of about 100 to 250 grams per week. With fat loss, it's a little different. You can see anywhere from 250 to 500 grams drop per week. So again, a whole bunch of variables. We're going to go into a lot more tips and tricks on how to implement things in each one of these areas. But a big thing to understand is that if your goal is to build muscle or fat loss, little thing you can quickly do right now is you can ask yourself, how much do I weigh? I weigh, say, 100 kilos. Can I do a pull-up with my own body weight for 6 reps? Can I do deadlifts with my own body weight? The answer is yes. Great. Then this becomes a lot easier to track and measure. If not, probably should be focusing on the base of your pyramid, so you can then peak performance with greater ease. And the numbers, it's easier to then track the numbers. Did I put on 125 grams of weight this week? Yes. Great. I'm ticking the box. I'm moving forward. If no, only put on 50 grams, probably need to add another one of these 20 strategies to help me. So let's dive then in to quick questions. If anyone has anything, if anyone's like, oh, I wish I could ask this question, or we could talk about this quickly, now's the time. Or if not, we'll then dive into fat loss tips. Is anyone good? Awesome. So let's then dive into fat loss top 10 tips. So tip number 1 is assess before and after. So, and I'm not going to read all of this out, but I did give some numbers before. So if you're thinking 125 grams to 250 grams of scale weight you should see increase each week, you want to make sure you've got a metric to measure it. Just like with this picture, to measure time, you look at your watch, 7 o'clock, look later, it's 8 o'clock, it's been an hour. And there's the time there. If you want to measure scale weight, you will need some scales. If you want to measure body fat, get some calipers, pinch some sights. You want to measure girth measurements, measure girth measurements. You want to have something that you can consistently assess, track, and measure. Common ones that we tend to use are body composition calipers, scale weight, photos, mood. I like to make sure that people feel good, because if you feel like a dog's breakfast, then probably not the best way to go. Like myself, I'm in a deep 60% deficit at the moment, doing about 24,000 steps plus 1 hour of cardio every day. And I feel pretty, a little bit shattered. I am running on 4 coffees as well, so that's quite amazing. But the thing to always ask is like, is it worth it for me? Yes, it is, because I'm getting leaner. maintaining a nice physique. But if I was like, I don't really care, there's no point, like there's no zest for life, then I've assessed it. I've decided from this point, it's not really worth it anymore. It's now time to make a change. But right now I'm enjoying myself. I'm still seeing the results. I'm getting the benefit. I'm tracking my performance when I train. I'm getting stronger. Okay, nothing needs to change. I can probably push a bit harder. But if the scale weight wasn't changing, I was getting weaker when I trained, my body comp's not changing, well then I'm going to reflect and make some changes. But the only way to do that is to track it. Other things you can track is your heart rate, put a blood pressure cuff on, test it first thing in the morning when you're resting. If it's higher, then it could indicate that your body's under stress. If you were to say, I have applied more stress to myself, this makes sense. If you haven't, well then your body's telling you that something maybe needs to change or something has changed and it's not having the benefit that you're looking for. Second one is start your day right. So, you've got two options. Get up with a smile or get up with a frown. Well, I don't know why you want to get up with a frown. You've just woken up. You don't even know what's going to happen today. So you might as well get up, have a smile, and start the day right. And a good thing that I do is I do it with this product known as True Celtic. It's just the shot of lime or lemon. So I do half lime and lemon with about 500 ml of water. And then what I do is I then drink the water. Because if you think about it, you've been asleep for about 7 to 9 hours and throat's pretty dry, so you're probably dehydrated. And a common thing that a lot of people do when they wake up, they go, I'm hungry. That is the body telling you it's really thirsty, but unfortunately the body doesn't tell us exactly what it needs. So dehydration over a large period of time is a big factor. It also does help stimulate digestive juices, so when you do eat your breakfast, it's a little bit easier on digestion. You might not feel as bloated, but you should also chew your food because if you inhale it, then that could be another thing. So make sure, start up with a smile, drink some water, use True Celtic if you like, or use Celtic salts. This product has a bit of cinnamon and ginger in it, which have other benefits as well with inflammation and insulin sensitivity, which is pretty cool for muscle growth. And it adds flavor to the water because if you're drinking 4 or 5 liters of water every single day, there is only so many times you can do that before you're like, I'm really over the taste of water. So this adds a variety. You could also do teas as well. Probably not coffee because it's a diuretic. It does dehydrate the body. So I recommend you do the water first and then you can utilize the coffee after. Number 3, track your data. So we talked about scale weight, measuring it. So you've got to make sure you're tracking. But a little thing that you can do to improve this even more is track across 7 days. 5 days also works. Why? I have no idea why 5 days works. I've just noticed that for some people it tends to work better, especially with nutrition. But I like to do 7 days because it's Monday to Sunday, so I can reflect on the week. But 5, if you're willing to apply yourself and make sure that you're always checking in every 5 days, you can set an alarm on your phone. That's pretty good too. But 7 days is pretty simple. It's like Monday to Sunday. How do they go? Is to track across those 7 days and then make... So for example, if your scale weight does not change over 7 days, you then ask yourself, okay, what's going to change next week to make my scale weight go down? So when it comes to fat loss, you want to look at increase your training, move more, decrease your nutrition, or supplements. So you can increase the supplements you take. So, and we're going to go through a few supplements as well. So if you were to go, I'm going to do an extra 4,000 steps a day. Great. You then track that over 7 days, making sure you're hitting those extra 4,000 steps, looking at the scale weight, and then you go at the end of the week, I was 77 kilos, now I'm 76. This now says this method has it worked in achieving the results for you. If you don't track it, and then in 3 weeks' time, you were 77 and then you jump on and you're like, oh, I'm now 77 again. I moved more, but then I stopped moving so much. Then I ate a little bit more, and then I moved a bit more, and then I stopped eating so much, and now it's all in balance. But if you check it every 7 days, you can really make a good educated guess on what you should be doing to move forward. And also, if the opposite happens, move more, weight went up. It should be going down from what I've been informed about, but maybe my body's not recovering from it. I'm sleeping 5 hours. Okay, I'll sleep 7 hours. Sleep a bit more. Oh, my body's now responding. So you can use that information to really help you to guide yourself. So good one to look at, scale weight and steps. Real simple one. How many steps did you? A thing you can do is if you go into like iPhones, you can go into the health app and it tracks your steps for you. You can even press W in it and it shows you the week. And so then you can look at your average steps. Like I looked at today, a client of mine, he's put on about 5 kilos. And he's like, man, I don't know why I'm putting on weight. I'm like, okay, pass me your phone. So pre-COVID, he was doing an average of about 6,000 to 10,000 steps every day. And then I looked at his app today and I'm like, you did 200 steps yesterday. He's like, yeah, I had phone calls. I laid in bed and did all my work. I'm like, dude, like, let's scroll back pre-COVID, 6,000 to 10,000. During COVID and now, like you're doing an average of 2,000 to 3,000 steps. Sometimes you're only doing 200 to 300 steps. Like, did you just get, yeah, he's like, I went to the bathroom 3 times. I'm like, how did you get food? I got Deliveroo. I'm like, oh my God. So very clearly, it's like, okay, it makes sense. Are you eating the same? Oh yeah, I am. Oh, I'm eating a few more burgers. Okay. So his energy intake is increased in what he consumes, but his daily movement, which is him moving and burning energy, has severely dropped, like 50%. So therefore his body's not burning as much energy, and so therefore it's retaining more fat mass. So good metrics to track, real simple ones as well. Number 4, when it comes to fat loss, the goal is to conserve protein. Reason for that is this provides amino acids to help build muscle or retain muscle. Because when you're working with fat loss, we are looking to slowly decrease food intake or calories. But the thing we want to maintain is, I was going to say steak because I love steak, but good sufficient protein levels. So a good level for example, start the day off with a protein-rich breakfast, about 40 grams. Think about it, you've been asleep for about 7 or 9 hours, haven't eaten anything, you're in a bit of a fasted state. So a good thing you want to do is give your body a large amount of nutrients. So examples are steak, nuts, raw animal proteins, or for those that are vegans or vegetarian, you can get 350 grams of mixed beans, and that would give you a good 40 gram serve of protein. So to lace into the question of what Donia and Grant wanted to ask, they wanted to know, how can vegans get strong? Well, having a good base of protein can be sufficient for them as well. The challenge with the beans is that may be 40 grams of protein, but it's about 80 grams of carbs. So where vegans and vegetarians can go wrong is they tend to consume too many carbohydrates, or they consume too many carbohydrates and don't burn the energy. So they're not utilizing it. So where they can get quite strong is making sure they cross their I's, dot their T's, get a good sufficient amount of protein in, variety of protein, so not starting steak or animal proteins, but variety of mixed beans. So you've got kidney beans, mixed beans, tofu, lentils. Nuts do have incomplete proteins as well. You can do protein shakes. Tempeh. Tempeh is quite nice. Mushrooms. Yeah. And a combination of pea and rice, and they should be looking at a variety of these proteins because they have what's known as amino acid profiles and variation. You'll find a lot of people that aren't vegetarian or vegan, they tend to run a few issues as well because, like, for example, they eat the same meat 3-4 times a day and they don't rotate it. So carnivore, vegetarian, vegan, really doesn't matter. You should always be looking to rotate the foods you eat so you can get a large protein or amino acid profile. So like we got also yogurts, Greek yogurts, cottage cheese, salmon, steak, pork, chicken, tofu, tempeh, nuts. So always looking at a variety because the more variety, the better. Where people tend to go wrong is just eating the same thing or just doing shakes. It's convenient, but it's not the best way. So if you're wondering a good number, think of your body weight. A good base where I start is 2 times your body weight. So if you weigh 100, 200 grams of protein would be your target. So if you were doing 50 gram serves times 4, that's 200 grams. So you do 4 meals with that serve in it. Fifth thing is having an indicator lift. So as we talked about tracking, you want to be tracking your performance in the gym. So the cool thing about training in the gym is that you can clearly see if you're getting better or not. So if you're doing 10 kilos this week and in 6 weeks' time you're doing 20 kilos, you have gotten stronger. Now, if you put on more fat, fat is not a contractile protein. Muscle is a contractile protein. So muscles contract to help generate force, to help us lift weight. So this would indicate if we went from 10 kilos to 20 kilos, this would indicate we have gotten stronger. Now, for us to be stronger than what we were, we probably would have had to build some level of muscle mass to be able to facilitate this. So having an indicator lift that's multi-purpose or multi-joint, so like the squat, involves the shoulders, the hips, the knees, the ankles, multiple joints, not multiple people, in case you're wondering, maybe you should get Alex or Tats, but multiple joints, so multiple muscles are working to move. So having an indicator lift is quite ideal because when you're training, and this is why we said 6 RM, because we're not going for 1 rep maxes, we want to make sure that we've got several reps in the tank so we are applying tension, load, range of movement to these joints to stimulate the muscle to grow. So some lifts, back squat, bench press, but you can also do front squat, you can do deadlifts, pull-ups, overhead press, dips. These are all big compound movements and good indicator lifts. And to check the indicator lift, walk into the gym tomorrow, pick 1 or 2 lifts, go, I'm going to see how heavy I can go for 6 reps. Do your 6 reps, track your performance over the next, design your program for 6 weeks, and then reassess those movements. If it's up, you probably put on some muscle. If it's down, something needs to be changed so you are progressing with building muscle, because more muscle requires energy, which will lead to fat loss. Number 6, glucose monitoring. So this is a big one. I learned this from Christian Maurice. This is pretty much, as it says, this changes the game. This is a huge game changer. And I learned this a while ago training a few competitors and people doing photo shoots because has everyone heard the phrase, a carb is a carb is a carb? If you haven't, pretty much just means, doesn't matter what it is, a carb is a carb. So 1 gram of sugar versus 1 gram of potato is just a carbohydrate. But the thing is, we've got Randa on the call. She's gone through a big fat loss phase, and now she's going into a muscle hypertrophy phase. There's me. I've done my muscle hypertrophy phase, and now I'm in a fat loss phase. So for Randa, she could have sugar, and it fuels her muscles to lift heavier weight, to train. Now, I'm in a fat loss phase, and I do the sugar. It fuels me for performance. It fuels everything to train. But Randa feels amazing. I feel terrible. And what this can do is this can show us exactly what could be going on. So if my blood glucose is going through the roof, well, what goes up must come down. And it could also indicate that my body, so as I said with Randa, she's doing really well. This might not affect her too much. So it means her body is uptaking those carbs really well. But for me, it indicates my body's not handling it. Now, if we were to do the vice versa and we put us both on potatoes, now, me being Irish, well, the famine has trained my body to handle potatoes very well, but Randa could do potatoes. She feels bloated, she feels uncomfortable, but we also see the numbers and hers goes up and we're like, it shouldn't happen, shouldn't cause a stress on the body, but for Randa's body, it does. So then we can get information, and for me, my body's not hugely affected. We get information using this monitor, and it can tend to tell us what type of carbs work best for these people. For example, date syrup and maple syrup are quite moderate to low FODMAP, quite similar in carbohydrates and intake. But I had Angela, female, her super iliac, so the side, like the love handle, so it was sitting around 10, and she used to do maple syrup. And then one day she changed from maple syrup to date syrup, and a week later it dropped down to about 4. So it was like, that's really weird. Didn't make sense, but it just meant that her body, when she had maple syrup, wasn't utilizing those sugars as well as date syrup. So then we changed from maple syrup to date syrup, and she dropped body fat. So yeah, knowing the type of carbs and how your body responds is a huge game changer, because then you can implement the types of carbs that work for you. So like I said, typically I wouldn't recommend like go munch on some gummy bears and go have sugar. But if like Randa was responding really well to it, it's like, cool, Randa, when you train, eat gummy bears. Oh, yay. For me, it's not a great score. Okay, Carl, you can't have gummy bears. But I love gummy bears. Yeah, but your body doesn't respond well to it. So you shouldn't do it. Bummer. Eat more potato. Inositol. So going from blood glucose monitoring into supplementation. So there are certain supplements that can help. Now, the thing is, when stripping fat for fat loss, one of the things that tends to happen, as I mentioned, you can feel like dog's breakfast. So if you feel, oh, I'm tired, I'm lethargic, then what tends to happen then is you move less, your body conserves energy, cognitive function, you're not sharp, you can't retain information. Yawning all the time. Well, no one wants to be around, no one wants to be that person. Things that can help, which can help with recovery, is something like inositol. So this can help with cell signaling and function of the body producing hormones, neurotransmitters, and growth factor. For example, growth hormone tends to upregulate when we're asleep. Now, if we're consuming less food, less nutrients, our body may have a harder time producing these hormones and growth hormone factors, like to assist with fat loss, maintain muscle mass, and also cognitive function. So inositol is quite nice in doing so. You don't need to take too much, like a few grams pre-bed, but this can help the body with recovery. But also does getting 7 to 9 hours sleep, so make sure you're on top of that. So with that, we talked about neurotransmitters, so things that helps with neurotransmitter production. Common ones that we have are GABA. This helps us to be focused, calm. Dopamine, it's our reward center, keeps us like driven, focused. It tends, when everyone goes shopping, they feel like they're on a high. That's dopamine being released. Serotonin, super chilled, relaxed. We tend to produce more serotonin when we consume a large amount of carbs. So a good time to feel happy and relaxed is pre-bed. You don't want to go to bed stressed. So if you really want to capitalize on this without taking it, have a good serve of carbs pre-bed. What type of carbs? Well, as we mentioned, you can test it yourself. Or a thing you can ask yourself is, how do I feel when I eat this? If you love potatoes, probably have potatoes. If you love rice, have rice pre-bed. Like for me, I love to mix frozen bananas, blueberries with rice and a little bit of coconut milk. Makes like a rice pudding, and I love eating that. So yeah, and acetylcholine is another neurotransmitter which also helps with focus as well. So these are pretty cool neurotransmitters to know about. And obviously this is also designed to print out as well. So when we do this in person, you guys can use this to write notes. Understanding neurotransmitters more. So when it comes to, again, being in a deficit, stripping body fat, there are other sort of supplements that you can look as well to help enhance the body's ability to recover and capitalize on neurotransmitters and recovery. So me personally, this is something that I'm currently utilizing for me pre-bed. Don't use Finibute, it's not allowed in Australia. So remember, this is all for educational purposes. So Finibute, if you're in the States, is quite good. It literally knocks you out. But if you were to think of this, if you were thinking, oh, I want to capitalize on neurotransmitters, the cool thing is that I'm not having to take any more food to help with recovery. That can keep my calories down. Think of it as like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. So for me personally, I currently do the top 4 to help with dopamine, neurotransmitter recovery. So then when I wake up in the morning, even though I'm on a 60% deficit, I should feel lethargic and tired. Because I utilize these supplements, does mean my body is a little perkier and my pistons are firing. So these are things that you can do. Recommendations would always be start from probably 1 to 2 grams or caps, because then you can see how your body feels. But this is where I'm up to, taking quite a bit. So it's there as a note for you guys. So if you are thinking, I might do some inositol, There is some product called Yin Reserve that we do stock that has the magnesium, threonate, and the inositol in it, and the theanine. So it's a good combination of having all three in one. I like to use it because then I don't have to get a bottle of this, bottle of this, bottle of this, and bottle of this. It actually combines all of it together, so it's quite easy to use. Number 9, balanced nutrition. Say what? Yes, as we mentioned, we use protein, but it's not all just about protein. Things such as you want to get methylation donors. So what does that mean? It means get more veggies, get more fruit, and more antioxidants like cherries, raspberries, and green leafy vegetables. But what does methylation do? So the thing that we've been talking about is neurotransmitters, cell signaling, really improving cognitive function. Methylation pretty much improves the nervous system, cardiovascular system, and immune system. And an interesting fact is when we stress a lot, a thing that you can be tracking is blood pressure. So if you're looking at blood pressure, you should be sitting around 120/80 at about 60 beats per minute, so pulse, resting. And you'll find if the body's under stress, these systems tend to upregulate or work overtime under that stress response. And you'll see your pulse goes up. So currently, like I've gone through a few surgeries and dealing with a few stressful events, my average resting pulse is between 80 to 90. Now, I have managed those stresses. It's now back down to about 70. Still not where it should be. But things that you could do, which are quite effective for your body, is you could improve the methylation pathways. So, as you know, I mentioned I have rice, blueberries, banana, with coconut milk. Well, I might even change the bananas to maybe some raspberries. I could look to have the fruit separately, mix some vegetables with my rice, and then eat that. So that I'm looking at how I can naturally boost my own body's defenses. This is why, aka, we recommend to have your vegetables with your meals. Which brings us to number 10, look at low FODMAP. So as I mentioned, stress can be a factor. Now, stress isn't the bad guy. It's just where we have chronic and excessive amounts of stress. So things that you can do, like if you're working in a stressful job or there's challenges coming up, you can't just kind of, walk up to your boss and club him against the head and be like, much better. Or, put your phone down, never to be heard from it again. Things that you can do is, okay, we know we've got these excessive stresses coming. They occur occasionally. Well, what are things that we could look to do that puts a little less stress on the body, like I mentioned with the carbohydrates? So find the right carbs for your body. Then, good base of fruits and veg, but also looking at something like low FODMAP, because low FODMAP causes possibly a little gastric stress, little less gastric stress on the digestive system. Also, as long as you chew your food 20 to 30 times per bite, but looking at low FODMAP foods can have less irritation on the bowel, which could cause a little less stress in the body, so then we can handle those excessive stresses with a little bit more ease. So these are little things that you can do. So put in some serves. You could do 200 grams or 400 grams. I personally do 400 grams to 500 grams, just because in the fat loss phase you get really hungry, so a larger amount of volume of food. But took a screenshot. These are the low FODMAP foods that we recommend at Vitruvian Health. Now, if you jump on the website, you can see where medium, high, and low FODMAPs are. Any questions with anything that we've gone through with the fat loss? Cool. So we're going really well. Awesome. Long time. Back into it. So you'll probably notice, what is the difference between fat loss and muscle growth? Well, the thing is, with muscle growth, with fat loss, our goal is to sustain our muscles, muscle mass that we have, as we have our indicator lifts, and then to strip as much fat as possible. So one thing to note is that if you're seeing your weights go up, or for example, this picture shows a side hover, if you could do 30 seconds today, 60 seconds in 4 weeks' time, and you weigh less, it's probably a good indication that your muscle, you've got maintained the muscle that you have, proved its function and efficiency. You've signaled to grow muscle, but because you're eating a little bit less, the body doesn't have all the energy required. So to conserve that muscle mass, your body is then burning or metabolizing more fat mass. Now, as I mentioned, if we manage our stress, improve our recovery, get those neurotransmitters firing, and really get everything on point, then if we see our scale weight going up, everything's ticked, all the boxes are good, it means that the body will have an easier time to build muscle. So one thing I've personally noted, and you have a think about it, success leaves clues. Who are the big muscular dudes in the gym? And don't tell me the roid rage dudes, but natural guys. They're pretty calm and relaxed. So if you're someone who's constantly thinking, got a lot going on, and you're maybe wondering, why am I not building muscle? Well, one thing you probably could do is when you rest, close your eyes, breathe, 2 minutes, timer goes off, do set. So kind of like, and Grant, one of the guys on the call said it really well, is really like, when he's in the gym, forgets everything else. That's his time, really taking the time for himself to really get started. And with saying that, take the time to start your day right. Yes, repeat number 1, start the day right as such with water. Now, just so you know, I'm not endorsed by True Celtic, but I know the lady who runs it, so lovely lady. But yeah, we're not endorsed. I'm not sponsored by them at all, but it's just a product that I use. As I mentioned, you could just get Celtic salts as well, lemon and lime and water. You can also do teas. Rosehip teas is more preferable because it increases vasodilation, which helps pump. You can also do beet juice, so blend beetroot in water with some ginger and cinnamon, and that will increase vasodilation, which increases muscle pump. So there's quite a few things out there, but this is the one that I use because, and it'll make sense soon, because it's got sodium in it. And with carbohydrates, because carbohydrates are necessary for performance, but with a good amount of sodium and carbohydrates and potassium, that water follows that. And so there we have more intravascular swelling in the muscle, so it fills up more. And so if it's fuller, transports more nutrients to that, then we're going to support recovery and assist in signaling to help those muscles recover and grow. So before in fat loss, we talked about getting the right amount of protein, and now it's about getting the right amount of carbs, because protein helps build muscle, but you don't need to then keep eating more and more and more and more protein. You get a good amount, good base, like 2 grams. The thing is, if you've got $1,200 in your bank account, and that is the protein and the fats, a good serve of everything, but you need $2,000, well, you could consume more protein, it's more costly, but something that's quite easy to do is rice, oats, potatoes, gluten-free toast. They're easier to digest than proteins, and it would be good to fill the gap, the $800 in your bank account, to build muscle. But also, what makes us feel happy? Carbohydrates. We feel really good, we feel happy. Now, if you feel, like I mentioned before, happy, calm, relaxed, well, then your body has less hassle, less stress on itself. And if you feel good, the body's then going to recover better, and that recovery will lead to more growth hormone production, which will help you to build muscle. The second thing to notice with carbohydrates is that carbohydrates break down to a thing called glucose or sugar, and that intersects into the muscle, and our bodies, when we contract our muscles, uses an energy called glucose. So if we consume a good amount of carbohydrates, our body has an easier time to access that glucose to contract the muscles, to train, to perform. So make sure you get carbohydrates because they help with training performance. However, just note that it doesn't mean you should always eat carbs, because even in a calorie deficit where you're just eating proteins and fats, your body does have a mechanism to break down those fats and proteins, to go through gluconeogenesis, to convert into glucose, to produce energy. So don't just start eating boxes of cereal, just think, gotta eat carbs so I can perform harder. Your body still has a way to manage it. Even so, in fat loss, we tend to consume less carbs, but when we're looking to build muscle, we tend to consume more carbs, because that is the macronutrient we can create more variety and variation with. But also, everyone feels good eating carbs. So happy, healthy you helps to build muscle. Third thing, electrolytes. So utilize electrolytes, add potassium to your post-workout, shake for maximal recovery, gains in size, because we have a thing called the sodium-potassium pump. So if you think about it, what carries nutrients? Blood. Well, if our sodium-potassium pump is off, so not working properly, like we got, like on a construction site, we need 100 workers to build this building in a few days, but we only hire 10. Well, if we don't have enough workers or enough electrolytes and nutrients, the body's going to have a harder time to recover and to build the physique we want. So electrolytes are quite good to utilize with potassium if you're doing a salt drink in the morning. So you've got this good balance. Now, in a dehydrated state, we have a lack of these, but in a good positive state, we have a good amount of these, which will help increase nutrient intake into that muscle. These are two companies that we use, Sinuplex Revive. It's just purely electrolytes. And then if you're like me and you want simplicity, Sabedo supplements can unfortunately not endorse by any of these because I love their products, but Sabedo does a combination of BCAAs, EAs, and electrolytes. So instead of you having to get 3 different blends, you can get that for one. But personal preference, if we're just thinking about potassium, this one. But if you're looking at for performance, building muscle, and you find it hard to eat first thing in the morning, this is what I use. It's easier on the stomach, but also gets all those nutrients transporting into the muscle to aid with recovery. Again, food is king, but if you're looking at supplementation, those are quite good as well, which we do stock. Number 4, indicator lifts. Yes, saying it again, you need to have an indicator lift because if you're not tracking, you're guessing. And if you're guessing, how do you know if you're really getting better? So really utilize an indicator lift to showcase to you personally that it's working or not. Because, I'd hate for you to see yourselves in 6 weeks' time and go, I am weaker. Oh, bugger, I have not put on muscle. Happens when we have an injury, but as a saying was said to me, the only reason not to train is because you're not breathing. That means you're dead. So unfortunately, rough saying, but even if you're not feeling great, don't feel like you can do much. The thing is, we can do a lot. So there's many lifts here. Even you could just walk in, do calf raises. So even when you're not feeling great, just making sure you got that routine, getting into those habits, showing up, doing what you can, and then going that day is great. So when you come back to it in, say, those 5-6 weeks, you're seeing progress. If you're taking a lot of time off, sometimes you won't see progression because you haven't practiced the movement enough either. So consistency is key. If you're doing it 3 times a week, keep doing it 3 times a week so that in that 4, 8, 12, whenever you want to test it, but 6 weeks. 6 is easier because it's 6 RM and 6. So when you get to that 6 week mark, you can clearly see, have I consistently done this? Yes. So no technique issues. Great. Is the weight heavier? Yes, it is. Fantastic. I'm consuming more carbs. I'm doing all these things. That indicates that you have built muscle mass. And the thing is, you might not see that muscle mass because you've got some fat surrounding that muscle. You've also got skin. So remember, the art of recomp is that transition of visibly seeing those muscles. So if you're not applying anything from the fat loss section and you're purely focusing on muscle, that's okay. Just understand that you may still have a bit of fat mass that's covering that muscle, so you might not see those definition sticking out. And if that's what you're looking for, then you should be applying this with some of the fat loss tips as well. Number 5, understand neurotransmitters. Yes, again, we are going through neurotransmitters. Again, because when you train to build muscle, you should be training with intent and focus, and therefore you should have these bad boys all on point. And again, notes there. Again, neurotransmitters pre-bed. So again, as I mentioned, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thing to notice with the inositol is that when you take a large amount of it, you can start to experience dreams. So you may increase vividness of dreams. If you're okay with that, awesome. If you're not, probably stop. Taurine helps with energy production and dopamine production. Magnesium, I love it. I think everyone should have magnesium. Helps with over 350 functions in the body, depending on the type of magnesium. So glycinate is what I use, but if you're someone who physically, when training to build muscle, you're causing more physical stress to the body, if you're always aching and in pains, then magnesium citrate would be something to look at instead. Theanine, that helps to just calm down the cortisol and stress response in the body, because again, we still want stress hormone pumping, but we just don't want excessive amounts of it. So if you're in like a very stressful position at work or in life at the moment, this can be quite good for your body to mitigate some cortisol. So you can still function, still fire, but just to help manage it. Multidextrins. So we talked about carbohydrates before, and we talked about types of carbohydrates that work for body. So the cool thing about as you get leaner, you actually need to eat more food to lose more weight and put on muscle, which is a pretty interesting one. So one thing that, one challenge is there's only so much you can eat before you're like, oh. And there's only so much wholesome food you can eat. So like a challenge for me is to put on size is, you go 30% surplus, 40% surplus. You just can't keep climbing and eating more potato, more rice. Like you get really blocked up and you're pulling out like solid potatoes. No, not really because you chew food, but it's just really just uncomfortable. So as you get leaner, things that you can start to utilize is things like multidextrin, which is literally just pure sugar. Multidextrin, so it's a medium chain carb. And what I've put here is your suprailiac. So your back fat, so where the subscap is, and your side, love handle, these are your two sites. And the back is an indication of carb amount tolerance. So the lower it gets, it indicates the more carbs you can handle, volume. But suprailiac is the indicator of your tolerance to types of carbohydrates. So you want a total of 18 mil. So you, should be 10 on the back, 10 or less on the back and about 5 on the side. And that indicates that your body will really be able to utilize those sugars and carbohydrates. So if you were to start to dose this, if you're around 18, 20, maybe do 1 gram per kilo of body weight, mix it in your intra-workout shake, so in your water, and you sip on it through your workout. As you get even leaner, like 15, 10, then you can be pushing for 3 to 4 grams. So if you think you weigh 100 kilos, you need to eat 500 grams of carbs, and you were to do, say, 2 or 3 grams, well, that's 200, 300 grams of carbs just in water. And honestly, this is the easiest way to get carbs in. The problem is, you're just drinking water. How exciting is that? I say that with great enthusiasm because obviously when we eat carbohydrates and food, it's more of an experience with it, and we tend to enjoy it a lot more. So should be able to do the sugars, but remember, if it doesn't make you feel happy, then probably don't do it. Fixed dihydrohydrogenase. DHEA, as it runs the whole show, it literally helps with coding of DNA and signaling. Yeah, it's also eating good, EPA is another fatty acid, so EPA and DHEA, these are two fatty acids that are omega-3 rich. So what the hell does that mean? It means that they are anti-inflammatory, so again, less stressors on the body, and we're looking to decrease the excessive amounts, and they also help with DNA production. So you might have heard things like shouldn't eat saturated fats or deep fried foods. It's because they are more, they affect kind of this DNA production or DHEA, so they're more omega-6 fatty acids and more inflammatory. And the thing that you can see with some people that consume a lot of these fats is their midsection. Like if you guys grab your midsection, it should feel soft. If you're in front of a table and you look to pinch a table, it's really hard. There are people out there where their fat in their stomach is as hard as grabbing a table. It's wow, can't even pinch it. So we want soft, malleable fat, so good omega-3 fatty acids, so it means it's easy for the body to transport and utilize, not hard. Quality. So like I said, with fats, you want quality fats, so good omega-3s. So when it comes to anything and everything, always choose quality over quantity. Always, always, always. Everything from friends to people, training partners, haircuts, is to find quality over the quantity. Like carbohydrates, as I mentioned, you could, like I said in an example, you could do gummy bears. So that is a good choice. But if you wanted to make it even better, make it easier on the body, multidextrin would be favorable. So there's all these variables from like, wouldn't recommend that. So you could do that. So like different tiers. So when you're looking at this, think more quality. But a great thing to do, as mentioned at the beginning, as we go back into fat loss, is to track the data. So how do we know it's quality? Well, Carl said so. That's a great idea. You can listen to Carl. But I believe that we should be testing these things out ourselves. Asking people is great. But to test the quality, track it, ask yourself, compare. So for example, if you want to eat chocolate fudge brownies, 100% do it. I agree with you. You should definitely do it. They're quality, they're gluten, dairy free, and they are delicious. But after 7 days, you may notice that 7 days worth of consuming chocolate fudge brownies is maybe a little too excessive. And then you go, did I achieve the result I wanted? No, I didn't. So it's probably not the quality thing to be doing to achieve that result. But the cool thing is you got data from it and you got to eat brownies for 7 days, which is awesome. So quality over quantity. Exercise diversity. So when it comes to building muscle, you want to make sure that you're not doing squats 7 days a week. You are looking at a little bit of variation. So one thing that can tend to happen is people will specialize in just one thing. Powerlifters, bodybuilders, they tend to just go into one area, only one area. But the thing is, for body recomp, we're looking at improving cognitive function, muscle, fat loss. We want to get a full approach to this. So one thing I do recommend is that if you were to take a snapshot of what your training looks like in your routine, maybe look at some variation in that routine to give you more variety and also open your mind up to a few more things. So personally, me, like running, did it some, but not anymore. So the thing that I like to do is if you're doing a lot of lifting, add some yoga so that improves blood flow, keeps the joints mobile and supple. So then your training performance doesn't hinder. If you like yoga, go lift so you get strong. From full range of movements. So last but not least, the fundamentals of building muscle are, and I say this every week to all of my clients, is 4 keys to success is progressive overload, making sure that when you look at your program, if it's squat, bench, dead, any exercise that you're looking at, you should be able to cross your I's and dot your T's and track that data and be able to go from week 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and be able to see that you have increased in reps, sets, tempo, or load, or all of them. The greatest thing you can do in the gym, and this is why training in the gym is the superior way out of any other way that I believe when it comes to tracking that progress, is I did 10 kilos for 10 reps. I'm now doing 11 kilos for 10 reps. You have lifted heavier. Very simple. You can look at gymnastics. You did it for 30 seconds. You're now doing it for 35 seconds. You have now progressed. Just like in finances, you had $100 in your bank account. You now have $200. You are now richer. So having a metric that you can track 100% is needed so you can confidently say at the end of the day, I have built muscle. Number 2, full range of movement. Not doing half reps, not doing quarter reps, working those joints through full range. Because what you want to do is you want to train your muscles to be functional. You want to train your muscles to be strong through a full range of movement, not just a partial. Because life happens. You know, car comes out of nowhere, boom. You don't want to be like, oh shit, I didn't train my calves to this point, so I can't fully jump and extend my leg to avoid this danger. My gosh, like, no, just train the muscles through full range of movement. So if the car does come, I'm not the one driving it, but you're able to get out of the way with good reaction time, of course. Time and attention, so be able to control that full range of movement, that load through a full range, and being able to pause at any point in time, showing that you are in control of that load. Because by adhering to these 3 things, for the progressive overload, there is a possibility of injury. But if you control that range and you control that load, you are decreasing the risk of getting injured and therefore hitting the final fundamental, which is not being in pain. Because if you're in pain, if it hurts, you need to either change the exercise or remove it. So those are the key fundamentals to crossing your I's and dotting T's. So if you can see from week to week that you have lifted heavier, you've increased the time, you've done an extra set, and you've worked through full range, you've controlled that time and attention, you've adhered to it, you know that you've been in full control of it and aware, and that you have not caused any injury or pain to yourself, you can say to yourself, I have ticked those boxes to cause my muscles to signal muscle growth. I've gotten a good amount of carbohydrates in, I'm feeling good, I'm getting good sleep, everything's gone well. You can then safely say that my body is building muscle. So when you hop on those scales, you should be seeing 125 to 250 grams weight gain per week to indicate muscle growth. So that is the top 20 tips for body recomposition. So if you were to quickly go through that all again, things to rattle off is having a routine in the morning, such as having 500 ml of water first thing with some lemon and lime salts, is to utilize certain supplementations like electrolytes, potassium to help improve muscle pump, but having a little bit of salt on your food can be just as good. Looking at routine, tracking your success, having an indicator or indicator lifts, so to track your performance day in, day out, and making sure that you are adhering to the fundamentals of progressive overload, full range of movement, time and attention, and not putting yourself in pain, to guarantee yourself that you are moving in the right direction with what you're doing. And remember, at the end of the day, progression, not perfection, is the most important pace for success, as if you fall short, you will arrive at greatness. Second thing to note is it's most important to talk, have a positive frame of mind. So it's most important to talk in your life is the one with yourself. So always looking after yourself, because if you don't look after yourself, you will. And always train the weakest link in the chain. It's the fastest way to strengthen the whole chain in general. So there's some bonus tips that you can utilize when working on recomp. So things you can always do is wake up with a smile, not a frown. Not here to fuck spiders. We're here to have a good time. So we're here to enjoy the process, what we do. Because if you don't enjoy the process, what's the point? I want to always start with a smile on your face. And if you're not enjoying it, time to make a change. So with that, that is our 20 tips for the presentation. I hope you all enjoyed. Now we can go into our Q&A section. Let's jump in questions or answers, where I will give some answers for you.
What was the last bonus that you said? Can you repeat it?
Yeah, so the final bonus was making sure, so look to train the weakest link. So for example, if you love training biceps, probably stop training biceps so much. Maybe if you're avoiding training your triceps because they're not as strong as your biceps, start training your triceps. Because whatever your weakest link is, that is what is going to stop your body from moving forward.
Yes. Injuries.
Yes. Don't avoid them. Don't avoid them. If you feel niggles, get on top of them straight away, because they can cause a meridian of issues later on.
Okay.
Carl, with the vasodilators, the rosehip tea, the sodium, potassium, and the carbohydrates, when would you recommend them pre-workout or post-workout? And is there a time frame when they work best? Like, is there a golden moment there where we can get them to utilise their most potential?
My recommendation is focus on pre-bed first, because the thing is, if you were to eat, say, a serving of rice, right? Like an hour before, they say you should eat carbs an hour before you work out for maximal recovery. Okay, if you eat rice, do you think it's been broken down and fully digested in your stomach within an hour?
No.
Yeah. Transit time takes anywhere between up to 14 to 18 hours. So, well, preferable time would then be pre-bed. So when you go to bed, your body has that time to digest those foods. So when you wake up, it's actually utilizing some of that energy. So a big time to focus is pre-bed. Then the second thing, and I'll start from fat loss first, because then as you put into focus on muscle, you are consuming more calories or food. So then the second one would be post-workout, because you've caused, when we train, we stress that body out, we stress those muscles. So then what do we want to do? We want to have good serve of carbohydrates post-training to facilitate that recovery, to relax the body so it can then start to recover. Third would be pre-workout. So as we start to consume more carbs, because, let's eat a kilo of rice. Oh my God, there's so much rice in one sitting. But if we diversify it across a few meals, then it's a little bit easier to consume. So pre-workout, pre-bed, post-workout, then pre-workout. So an hour or two before. Now, with the type of carbohydrates, if we were to say maple syrup, blueberries, raspberries, rice, then potato, well, that example shows something that's easier to digest, quicker to break down, and something that takes longer to digest. So we want to think maple syrups, rice, berries, pre-workout, post-workout, so our body can really break it down a little bit easier so we can utilize it. And then potatoes probably further away from training, because it does take longer to digest. So, but you can still have those for nighttime as well, because you feel good. So easier digestible carbohydrates, as we mentioned with the glucose monitor, this will show you the types of carbs that work well in your body. So as we showed before, this is going to be a real game changer for you, because then you can find out what types of carbs work really well. Like I just said, potato, it's a lower GI, takes a little bit longer for the body to break down. And again, the example I used with Randa and me, like if Randa's body just doesn't handle potato, it just takes a lot longer. So the body's probably not going to utilize it as soon as we think. But for me, if it does work really quickly, well then I'm probably going to use that differently as well. So utilize the carbs that work for the body. Yep. Anyone else?
For muscle growth, how many grams of carbs do we need per day?
If you look up so if you were to punch into a calculator, so this is a few calculations that we use. So something that we do is when going into body recomp. So here's an example. We got training days, rest days, so the days we don't train, we calculate our calories accordingly. So when consuming carbohydrates, so let's go. So I'm going to go Carl, goals muscle growth. I weigh 92 kilos. My height's 176. I'm 31. Okay, cool. It's already there. You go into any calculator, like calorie counting calculator, you can get formulas for working out your basal metabolic rate. So here it calculates my calories. Now what I do is I go as I mentioned, 2 grams of protein. So 184 grams of protein is my target for the day. I then calculate fat. Something that's really easy, just go for 1 gram, because 92, 1 is 92. Double it, 184. So then you go, okay, well my calories are 1564. So that's how many calories comes from those proteins and fats. So just so we know, 1 gram of protein is 4 calories. 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So then you times that by the number. There you go. That's your base. So then calculate that. So if we go 15964, so we go 2917 minus 1564, 1375. So 1353. So that's how many calories I have left. Now, 1 gram of carb is 4 calories. Divided by 4, I can have 338 grams of carbs. So for body recomp to start. So that's where I would start. And then if I wanted to build muscle, a starting point is a 20% surplus, because you want to guarantee weight gain. So 484. And how did I get that number? You literally go 2197, 10% of that is 291, double it. So it's about 580. So 580 plus 2917 would be the total calories, and that's how many grams of carbs I would have. So 484. So let's quickly do yours, Danielle. Scale weight.
67, I
Cool.
think.
67. Your height. That's
173,
Yep. Age.
33.
Cool. So then from here, boom, female, calculate your weight. So there's your numbers, 119, 223. So we scroll down hypertrophy. A good base for you would be 382 grams of carbs, 134 protein, 67 fat on your training days.
Okay.
And then one thing I do on Sundays is I just drop the carb intake by half. Just because like when you're eating a lot of carbs, it's just a lot of food in the stomach. So again, that's a lot of work for your gut. So I take a day off so I consume a little more fats because they're easy to digest. It's another strategy you guys can use. So you're doing 6 days of eating more food, and then you have a day where you're not worried about having to eat so much, and you're like, it's a lot. You'll notice that you'll start to get hungrier, so then you're able to eat more.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else? Any other percolating questions? Okay, sounds like Donna's good. Grant's good. Randa?
I don't think I have any questions.
Cool. All right, well, let's quickly then go through a quick dial in. Donya, what's one takeaway from you from today?
One takeaway.
Yep.
Well, that if in fat loss, if we want to lose fat, we have to focus more on nutrition, and if we want to gain muscle, we have to focus more on training.
Yep. Both play important roles, but a large reason why people might not be losing fat is based off nutrition and NEAT. And with muscle growth, it tends to be more on the fundamentals of progressive overload, time and attention, full range, and no pain. Yes, and tracking your performance. Cool. Grant?
The one great thing that I want to look into is actually the glucose monitoring. Found that very interesting. That's something that I'm taking away from this. It's definitely that I'm going to look into further.
Yeah, 100%.
Very excited about that one.
Yeah. Don't go crazy and just start get all the types of carbs that you can eat and then start eating them all. Look to really go one at a time.
Yeah.
Awesome. Randa?
Just establishing, I suppose, a routine. In terms of nutrition as well.
Yeah.
And I'm also interested in the glucose monitoring, so that's cool.
Yes, well, you're in the field for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, routine. We actually we got sent a actually I'll just grab it now. So something that was sent to us a few hours ago by my partner. So we got sent this link from Ben Rakowski. So he has a conversation with, so I can get the link for it. So it was a podcast and it talks about daily routines and daily habits. That's cool. One of the things that he talks about is people want to build a habit or a routine. They feel like they've got to commit another 1 to 2 hours in their day to make health happen or to improve body comp. And he actually goes, just find 10 minutes. Because, as I showed, to find 10 minutes to get up, pour some water in a cup, mix some salt in, drink it, takes them less than 10 minutes. But then that 10 minutes of commitment, they might have a domino effect on other habits or routines. So a cool thing that you could do is think about what's one thing that you could commit 10 minutes to every day reading a book, 10-minute walk, breathing, and again, track it and see how that affects your routine or your energy and mood through the week. So yeah, cool. Well, awesome. Well, thank you all for attending. That brings us to the end of the 20 top tips to how you could accelerate your body recomposition from your co-host, Carl. So thank you very much. If any questions or anything comes up, don't be afraid to email us at info@vitruvianhealth.com.au, or all of you guys have my number personally. Just shoot me a text and be happy to help. Adios, amigos.